They were groomed by men who targeted vulnerable girls. But these victims, some as young as 10, were written off by the very authorities that were supposed to protect them. That's the verdict of a report which outlines years of failings by police and social services in Rochdale. It was ordered after 9 members of a child sex abuse ring were jailed in May. Our social affairs editor, Jackie Long, has spoken to the family of one young girl who says she was passed around like a piece of meat, but that nobody gave a toss.
On the streets in towns across the northwest, children were being raped and brutally sexually assaulted by a string of men. And in the offices of the services supposed to be protecting those children, precious little was being done to stop it.
She was being raped on a regular basis. She was being held in rooms where there was men coming in one after the other to abuse her. The thought of such a young child, and I say child because that's what she was, her childhood has been taken away from her.
Marie's daughter Sarah was just 12 when she was befriended by the young men who would eventually be the first of many to sexually exploit her. As she went missing for days on end, Marie realised she was in danger and begged the authorities for help.
I went for child protection in my area. I never got one phone call back. The school were well aware of it. I'd gone to the police in the area where I lived. Very little was being done. It was as though it was all just brushed under the carpet. I don't think services knew what to do because it was of an ethnic nature, and by that I mean the perpetrators that was doing this to my daughter were of an Asian background, and I think for race relations they didn't want it to be aired.
Unable to protect her child from the men, she voluntarily put Sarah into care.
To force the hands of social services to do something, and that's what we had to do.
But she wasn't looked after in care?
No.
This didn't stop when she was in care?
No, if anything it got worse. The men were waiting outside in cars. She was being asked to take other girls, yet the police would at one point said they could prosecute my daughter for coercion, yet she wasn't able to break free from these people. This went on for us for 5 years, and it's only now my daughter's recognising that it wasn't her fault.
Much of the abuse happened here in Hayward. The report says it was known as far back as 2007 that around 50 children were being sexually exploited, some as young as 10. I spoke to one of the victims who didn't want to appear on camera, but when I asked her why she thought nothing had been done to stop it, she told me no one cared about us. Not the men, but no one else either. It was the trial of these men in May, convicted of a raft of sex offences against children, which exposed the failings of so many agencies and prompted today's review. It concluded that too often the girls had simply not been listened to, or that care workers judged that they knew what they were doing. Indeed, some had chosen to do it.
I think the biggest failing has been the way that organisations shared information, individuals shared information. So a lot of the young people, account of what was happening to them wasn't put together with other young people who were making similar allegations.
But isn't it not just about whether that information was shared? It was people's analysis of that information, wasn't it? It was about these girls coming and saying, I'm being sexually exploited. And people either not believing them, people who are supposed to care for them, not believing them, or suggesting that somehow it was consensual sex, yet these were children.
And the report's very clear about that and those failings of organisations, individuals in those organisations, and it's really disappointing. And, you know, I'm as shocked and appalled as anybody reading the report would be.
Marie, once so desperate for help she took this banner and staged a protest in the streets, is now joining other families considering legal action against the authorities.
We've lost everything, not just our home life. This is going to take us years to overcome, and in many cases she may never ever come out of this, but you still have to support her and be there for her, to put your arms around her and still love her, even though you know what these men have done.
The council's failures have been many, they've accepted that. But they denied today that race was ever a factor, a denial that will fail to satisfy many critics. They have accepted, though, that their appalling refusal to listen to what children were telling them left children in the hands of brutal abusers.
And at past, we'll be discussing the issues raised in that report. If you want more on the story, you can read Jackie Long's blog on our website, channel4.com/news.